Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a subject that I see sort of referred to a lot, particularly in comments about how do we stop or defeat globalization. It seems that the globalist cabal, they control big finance, they control big pharma, they control most of the major bodies, political parties. They're all powerful. They can just install their candidate, their preferred flunky as like Prime Minister of Britain. The once mighty empire is now nothing more than a little stooge flunky fetch and carry pawn controlled by the globalist powers. And they just install their own people. Fuck. So they seem to be all powerful. How do we stop them? They control the media. Any story that's negative or information that's negative to globalization is buried. Anything that the globalists need to condemn and criticize their opponents, like the way they're going after Trump and that sort of stuff. They amplify these stories out of all proportion. Climate change is amplified to the max. And so how do we beat these guys? Well, determining a prescription for beating them is one thing. Implementing it, of course, is quite another. And the challenge will be in the implementation, not in the prescription itself. But in order to push the globalist projects and to enforce it and ram it down our throats, the globalists have had to rely on lies and perversions and underminings on a grand scale. So we're told, that the climate change is a perfect one. It's presented as an imminent catastrophe, and this is all done through very imaginative type future modeling, software modeling and so on, and predictive modeling that over the last 40, 50 years has proved to be spectacularly incorrect at every turn. But they're using this to justify other actions. Now, whenever they come out with these catastrophes, for example, misogyny is everywhere, Nazis are everywhere, white supremacists are everywhere, climate change is killing us, and these are all inventions, they're all lies, and they have to tell these lies, the terrible lies they're telling about Donald Trump and his supporters, and the terrible lies they're telling about January 6th, and so on, and about the 2020 election, how it's the fairest election ever. A guy who could barely string a sentence together, who didn't do any campaigning, gets the largest amount of votes in presidential history. Yeah, right, sure. So they rely on lies, on rigging and fixing, and planting swastikas for the media. The whole thing. So if the prescription to defeat globalization, which again is separate from implementation, is a return to truth and honesty and accuracy, maybe more than truth and honesty, and an independent, impartial media, independent, impartial courts of law, merit in the sense of only the brightest students get to university, use scholarships generously to help the bright kids who are less well off, and I'm very much in favour of that. And merit only, strictly merit, only the most qualified person gets the job. Only the people with the best results get to university, and so on. So implementing merit and honesty and integrity. The public service must be absolutely impartial, not the politicised bunch of goons that are running around the public services in the United States and elsewhere, Australia, Britain, and so on. This return to this impartiality and honesty, integrity is it. Now, there's a whole bunch of people who've been radicalised through the university system. We need to remember, if the standards hadn't been dropped and only the brightest kids were getting to university, then it would have been impossible for the globalists to create this avalanche of activists that have gone into, particularly into areas like law and psychology and all sorts of things like that, and many different, human resources. The list goes on. And you've got these millions of people around the Western world and human resources that genuinely believe, due to indoctrination, that the world is awash with Nazis, and it's their job to fight the Nazis, not to actually do something that is useful for their fellow citizens. So returning to honesty now, just the merit, say just looking at merit alone, if it was strictly merit only, getting to university as a case in point, or any form of higher education, then the brightest kids would do it. And it's very hard. It's not impossible, but it's much harder to indoctrinate the bright kids. It can be done, but the numbers are very small. And so that creates a huge difference in terms of the people that are going out into the workforce. And a lot of the jobs that we see today, diversity, equity, inclusion officers, are built around the ideology. So there had to be places where these radical ideologues who are coming out of university had to be places where they can be slotted in, where they continue to support and enhance the globalist project. So this is, again, very much part of how the wider globalist project sort of feeds off itself to create more of a furor for globalization. So you cut that off, the amount of kids going to college to be indoctrinated, you cut that off. You also cut off then the amount of jobs that are being created, if you like, for them. The diversity officers in private business and through government departments and so on. So that immediately will have a knock-on effect, just enforcing merit here, and reasonably so. So that would be just one thing. Now, merit is a form of honesty. As soon as you do affirmative action and you give the low IQ moron a position at university, it's an expression of perversion and thus dishonesty. That person can't get there on any form of merit. So therefore they're getting artificially inserted into a system, and they're far more likely. When you go to university, you're surrounded by people who are brighter than you. It makes you feel inadequate and insecure, and you go, "Oh, gee, I didn't know I was so dumb." And so when that creates a sort of a chip on the shoulder type attitude that manifests itself, when they go into the workforce. So they're all constantly fighting back against that feeling of being inadequate and being stupid and moronic. And so anyway, that's one thing. And other things like judicial officers, judges, and magistrates, and like there's the whole legal system has pretty much been captured by activists and those that are determined to engage in social justice and restorative justice. And so we've got the insane fucking situation where there's a convention of judges and magistrates, and they begin they begin that conference or that meeting by saying that the Indigenous Australian inhabitants really do own the land, and that they are the owners of the land, and they are the oppressed victims of those evil fucking white fascist Nazis, and that's the judges. That's the fucking judges. Can you imagine something more prejudicial? Something that has not been proved in a court of law with evidence, and the people who are at the apex of the judicial system, the ones that decide who goes to prison and who doesn't, they're can you get something more prejudicial? And these are the fucking most senior judges in the. I mean, you couldn't even invent this, but there you go. So the loss of all these things, of the impartiality of public servants, and the way the public service willfully and aggressively obstructed President Trump's agenda. I mean, he was elected, not them, and yet they have a right to obstruct the agenda and so on. This returning the public service to absolute neutrality. These are the things which also, if you look at, say, the publishing industry, the museums, and the so on. these are all used now as conduits for globalist propaganda and anti-white, anti-Western propaganda. So when the government's spewing out vast sums of money, which it does, and it's only giving it to, we'll only give money to people, to book writers or authors or who hate white people and hate Western society. We'll only give money to them. Then you'll see a perverted outcome, but it's not an honest, it's an ideologically loaded outcome. Just explain the history as it is. You don't need to invent it, tell all these terrible lies. And when I look at say a book about Aboriginal history in Australia, one that sold quite well, it was jam packed full of lies. Some of the assertions made were beyond fantastic. It's like, what? And claims of utter silliness. It's just like it's pitched to primary school kids that'll believe this crap. But again, you've got the activist teachers that the lies are quite acceptable, provided they direct hatred towards white people and white society. This in itself that's not honest. Was the boomerang, the Aboriginal boomerang, an Aboriginal invention, which was the beginning of space age flight? I mean, to even suggest or imply that transcends the highest levels of absurdity and ridiculousness. But there you go, and insanity. But these are the sort of things that are happening. So if honesty and integrity and accuracy, again, accuracy more is just as important as the honesty and integrity, then you can't get those sort of things, because the question comes, is it accurate? Yes or no? And if there is some sort of fuzzy wiggle room in between, then maybe that could be expressed as a footnote or something like that. Is this school teacher, an activist? They are. Well, then they can't be a teacher. You can't be. But you want to be an activist? Go off, be an activist in your own time. But you're not going to be a teacher on the taxpayers' money. So this type of thing, and a return to that, and just the removal of the activists. Or people, if they want to be activists, they do so only on their own time. And I remember lecturers and teachers that clearly had leftist views and sympathies, but they didn't push it. That they were, if you pressed them on it, you could kind of get some sort of declarations out of them, but you had to go looking for it and pushing for it. They didn't volunteer it, either directly or indirectly, because they believed at the time that wasn't their role. Their role was to teach or to lecture or to whatever, but it wasn't to push a political agenda. Now it's almost required that you push a political agenda, and if you don't push a political agenda as a teacher, you can be you'll find yourself on the outer. So this is what I mean by returning to accuracy and merit and so on. Just these things, because these were the vital things that the globalists had to break down first, before they could insert their activists and then in turn insert their ideological propaganda. So by reinstituting those things, the merit and the accuracy and so on, then the principal means and the principal devices that the globalists are using to push their ideology, their very destructive ideology, in my view, including mass migration and so on. Everyone's entitled to come here, bored as a Nazi, and trying to only bring in immigrants that are qualified, and something is fascist, and all this sort of stuff. This is all ideological fanaticism and absurdity. So by returning to merit and accuracy, we defeat and can defeat all of this. And this is something, the relationship between activist teachers and activist college lecturers and so on, the relationship between that and the kids that they're pouring out, the NGOs that are claiming to be charities, but in fact are nothing of the sort. They're raging activist groups, and should have their charity status withdrawn, and these type of things. There's a lot of things we can do really at the administrative level. Not that they won't be violent pitch battles fought over it. There will be, but or intense pitch battles fought over it. But these are the things that need to be done. And if we don't have the the wherewithal or the kahunas to do it, then we've already lost. And now that means also we need to hold levers of power. But if we see the sort of things that, say, Governor Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida, he's prepared to duke it out with the woke organisations and groups on the street. Whether it be, I don't think he's gone far enough. I think he should go further. But nonetheless, he's prepared to take them on in a way that really very few other politicians across the Western world are. And Governor DeSantis needs to be, I believe, given kudos, and that needs to be appreciated. But also, what he's doing, he's got that determination, and you can call it courage, you can call it the will, or the focus, or even just prepared to make it a priority. And that's something I think to be admired, but also to be used as a possible example of how it can be done, and some of the things that can be done, and the methodology used. So these are things that if we just return honesty, integrity, and merit, then already the globalization machine is defeated at that point, because they rely completely on non-merit, on lies, inaccuracies, ideology, and churning out low IQ, moron, brainwashed kids to go and be their foot soldiers, whether at the NGO placard waving level or sending diversity officers into the HR departments. It doesn't matter, or to administer the university, the museums exhibits. How many museum exhibits now are all evil white fascist Nazi white people, colonialism, It's all over the Western world. It's wall to wall, for fuck's sake. Would that happen naturally or organically? Of course not. It's activists getting in there and telling lies. That's all it is. And it shouldn't be that hard to defeat. So you've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.